Now, we've gone on all morning and, the better part of this, up to this presentation about how business is really transforming using software as a key mechanism to change. The point is that clearly, if you take companies like Nike and Amazon and Tesco, the transformation has not just been about being able to release products or improve their products, but it's become more a function of extending their businesses to areas that they didn't, that we didn't normally associate them with. And they've done it remarkably quickly, and that's really the key message, is the transformation is happening, and it's happening very, very dramatically. Companies, now Nike, for instance, has now been seen as a healthcare company by some areas, right? Amazon, clearly from being an e-commerce player, has become an IT player. Tesco has able to scale, and it's not just knowing what products they sell, but they're getting more and more deeply involved in finding out what their customers want, like, what their preferences are, and so forth. So this change is real. So this slide really, and I'm going to try and condense it to giving a key takeaway for every slide. This is about the fundamental transformation that's happening in companies, and they're happening very rapidly, right? So the transformation is the key point here. This is about adoption, the rate at which technology has sort of changed in the way technology has been adopted. On the far left, the 38 years you see is referring to stereos and radios. It took about 38 years before 50 million users across the world, had a stereo or a radio in their house. It took 13 years for TV to get 50 million users. The World Wide Web took, a good 4 years before it had 50 million users. Facebook took 3 years. But if you look at the smart mobile device, it's just taken 1 quarter for Apple alone to sell 50 million iPhones. So obviously, how quickly technology is being adopted and embraced by users all over the world. Okay? So now this is about the rate at which adoption is happening across the world. What this also tells is it's really building upon layer, right? So you've got the TV as an interface. You've got the World Wide Web as a means of connectivity. Facebook clearly is going to become a platform for a lot of people to use. And the mobile device is really omnipresent. Everybody has one nowadays. Okay, now, while all of this is happening, clearly the consumer is not giving any quarter to anybody, right? The experience is important. Quality is just as important. So some very interesting observations, right? People don't have patience. So if the app doesn't work in 3 seconds, they moved on, okay? There's a ton of apps out there. Everybody's trying to build an app, but 80 to 90% of them have only been used once, okay? And clearly, the biggest of them all was the NASDAQ glitch when Facebook carried out its IPO. For those of you who don't remember, there were no Facebook shares being traded until 11:30. Okay, orders were coming in manually, but and any changes were not being recorded. And all NASDAQ could talk about was it was a technical glitch. There was millions lost in valuation, people lost money, so a whole bunch of lawsuits which are yet to be settled. The point is, this is where the quality aspect comes into play in an environment that's extremely sort of challenging and complex. Okay? So, we've talked about quality, but just as much as quality and user experience being important is the speed with which applications need to get to the market, right? That is clearly going to differentiate companies from being, a follower or, or a laggard to being someone who can leapfrog their capability. One of the critical sort of examples that we are seeing, especially in the banking world, because I'm guessing a lot of you are from the banking industry. Banks are facing threats. Banks have also got opportunities. They're trying to get into new geographical markets. And while they're trying to do this, they've got banking licenses. They want to reach as many consumers as possible. Okay? Retailers are trying to do the same thing. You'll hear about Tesco later, which is just trying to, get into more and more foreign markets. And for that, they needed to be able to take all their systems which are very robust systems in the UK, and take them overseas, deploy them quickly and rapidly. So you've got to move from long cycle times to build software and compress it down to weeks or days. Now, on the left-hand side, what you see of this slide is everything that we talked about, right? I talked about the web, we talked about the mobile devices and such. On the right-hand side, what you're seeing is the layers that have been accumulating at all these large organizations that are trying to get services to that consumer, right? Mainframes. It's actually, the right-hand side is a lot like, currency. We still have cash. We still use checks sometimes. We use online trading. So we've got all these various mechanisms of conducting commerce. It's the same way with the technology layers. So the mainframe systems continue to play a vital role in a lot of organizations, okay? Legacy systems, applications that were built specifically for a purpose by large organizations, people are scared to touch it, they won't touch it, they are mission critical, so they continue to operate. They've integrated with a lot of third-party providers, payment gateways, logistics systems, all fundamental to making sure that your service is being delivered comprehensively to the customer. And then you've got additional services maybe deployed through the cloud, via the cloud, mobile services and what have you, which is now adding another layer on top to an architecture which is now existent, prevalent, and it's not something that's just going to go away, okay? Now, how do you get into this? Now, you're building applications today that's got to build, that's got to access all these systems either through a mobile gateway. You've got to set up databases. That's a given in any application. You might have any unique features that you might want to build, but you don't want to go and start building fundamental functionality from scratch, right? And that's where the speed component becomes important. You've also got to make sure that what the end consumer sees is a real world kind of an experience rather than delays and so forth. So the minimum viable product that you've got to release has to come out much faster in a much more user-friendly application. So now we've set the stage for really what is at hand. We need velocity and we need quality. So what really comes in the way of doing this? I've talked about the complexity a bit. And if you really look at the challenges that face most organizations, it's an acronym that we coined at CA. It's called DRIFT. The number one issue is, even if a developer is developing a line of code, he is dependent on a lot of different systems around. It could be in-house systems, it could be third-party systems, it could be hardware infrastructure, okay? And therefore, he's constrained from the very get-go on how much he can actually code without having, and make that code relevant before it sort of gets released to the next stage. Now, to be able to deliver real-world experience, you've got to have real-world kind of data that hits the code base so you understand whether the software is going to scale or not. Okay, inconsistent quality. As you're building, there are multiple people touching lines of code. It could be within your organization, it could be partner code. And as you're building all of these systems together, you're not able to maintain the same levels of quality because you've not tried it together and it's not been tested properly. Frequent deployments, bugs, okay, feature changes, applets being added on, plugins, what have you. All of these things are forcing you to make sure that you're releasing more frequently, deploying more frequently to get the application out to the market. And finally, to put all of this together, the time and cost is pretty expensive. Just to set up a performance lab can take you a lot of time. It could be 3 months, it could be 6 months. The cost associated with that is humongous. So it takes a lot of planning and obviously takes a lot of time, and you've postponed a lot of the activity to the performance testing stages before you uncover problems. Then you go into this whole cycle of debugging and then troubleshooting and then going back to fix the bugs. So you've got to get rid of this. And a lot of this exists because the traditional way of software development followed this highly sequential process. Somebody would sit down, write a bunch of requirements, gets handed over to the development organization. They'd sit and try to interpret it, understand it. They write code. It gets into the next stage, which is testing. There might be arguments around whether they've got a comprehensive set of test plans and so forth. The whole process. And frequently what happens is, they try to figure out how to deploy this very quickly. And I just want to make a point here is the release and the deploy methodology that has been used so far is typically being coined as, is being given the term DevOps. What we at CA are contending, in a way, is that this definition really is broader than just release and deploy. Okay, and I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, now when you look at this whole sequential method of development, this is what contributes to months and years of development for certain functionalities or products. So this will not work. Okay, so we know that this is not going to work. So what is it? Okay. So what we need are three things. Okay, you've got to be in a continuous mode of development, deployment, releasing, or delivery, whatever you want to call it. So the word is continuous. The next is integrated. Okay, you've got to be integrated with each of these various stages of this development life cycle. The third is agility. A lot of companies today have embraced agile methodologies, but unfortunately, they have not put in the right tools in order to make sure that the code that they're writing in agile fashion is really high quality code. So they run their scrums, they've got these sprints that come out. However, if you've not built in an infrastructure which enables the output to be thoroughly tested, then what you've come out with is probably substandard code. So three things: continuous, integrated, agile. CIA. Scary? So if this is adopted, and we believe that CA has a lot of all the capabilities that is needed to make sure that you're able to now take software development cycles from the months and years that we talked about to days or weeks. And a lot of customers have done this. We get into a little bit of, what those are. So we've got a significant number of award-winning applications for each of these areas. The planning side, we've got CA Clarity. I think some of you have already utilized those applications. We've got service virtualization, application test, which helps in the entire testing process in an automated manner. Security, CA has acquired Layer 7 as a company recently, which helps in addressing your security needs. And releases are release automation, which again is a technology that we acquired recently through a company called Nolio. And we've got a continuous delivery mechanism which enables us to do the CIA that I talked about a minute ago. Now, once you've done this, you move into the operate mode where you've got to continuously monitor what's happening to your application in production. It's not just the application, it's even the infrastructure. You've got to be able to monitor it continuously, provide the feedback loop so that you're able to take that feedback and bring those results back into your testing cycle. So I'll do a little bit of a deep dive into each of these areas to make sure that you're able to understand what CA does and where we play. Okay. So we talked about removing constraints. Service virtualization is, we feel, a critical element. It's been highly, highly beneficial to a lot of companies. And what this really does is gives the developer a much more comprehensive way of testing the code way up in the development lifecycle. Typically, a developer does JUnit testing, which is very unit-based testing. They don't have access normally to a lot of the back-end systems. They don't have access to performance-related metrics that they need to be hitting. So this is where, and that's because of all the constraints that we talked about earlier, the cost, the lack of infrastructure, et cetera, right? But what we found is, in the vast majority of the cases, that by using service virtualization, they're able to make the development community at least twice as productive. So what this graph tells you is, without CV, the amount of hours that typically in a 40-hour work week that the developers were expending was 14 hours was basically waiting for test data, waiting for environments and such. With this service virtualization, they're able to move to a much faster speed of development, of quality code, because of the availability of these systems. So one of the key examples here is our is in Europe. I mean, obviously, a lot of companies, a lot of banks here in Australia have derived benefit, some of which you heard in the morning. Lloyd's has got, they had 40 development teams that were all working on different parts of code. They have derived tremendous value out of using Lisa or service virtualization. I have to step it up because I'm getting signals from behind that I'm sort of taking my own sweet time. Application test. Application test is really a mechanism for having a comprehensive set of end-to-end testing methodology, right? What you see on this is a typical architecture of an application that most organizations have. They've got the front-end web-based application or a mobile-based application, which then comes through, and you've got an API layer, which talks to the various back-end systems through an ESB layer. Now, again, there were examples spoken earlier in the morning. You've got your core systems and you've got your channels. Now, if you've got the ability to emulate or to even figure out what kind of performance metrics you're going to have, your mobile testing becomes a lot more robust. On the back-end side, if you're able to capture the behavior of mainframe systems, you're able to virtualize it and get more comprehensive testing. And again, if you've got test data that you normally would not have, that's another huge reason for people to be sitting and waiting. If you're able to generate actual test data or data that is representative of the use cases, you have a set of test results that tells you your code, tells you whether the code is working properly or not. Addresses the quality problem tremendously. Okay. Union Bank, again, they went through a major acquisition, and because of the disparate systems, they had to make sure everything was working fine and delivering the services to the level of quality that is expected. They were struggling with it. The combinations of systems and services was becoming extremely difficult to manage. And with, again, our application test and service virtualization, they were able to successfully complete all of their testing, and they are now one of our our best customers in the US. Okay, application test for mobile. This is huge. Almost every application now has to be served up via a mobile interface. The forms, the factors, the browser, the operating system, all of those vary, and the combinations are huge. Testing all of those becomes almost monumental. So again, our application test allows for you to capture, by recording the kinds of scenarios that you want to be testing, reuse it across various platforms, okay? This is something which normally people would have to, and I've been in a software environment for a significant amount of my time, where if you don't have this, the amount of time taken to manually go through and test each and against every device is completely unrealistic. So you've got to have this if you want to serve a high-quality mobile product. Okay, mobile cloud and test. Now, it's not enough that you just capture the behavior on the mobile. You've got to make sure that it's performing and it's being tested with speeds, with data that is going to simulate the kind of speeds and the number of hits that are going to get hit on that application. We've got a cloud-based application with our partner who helps to test this, as well as to be able to measure how the traffic that is happening between the site as well as the application. This is an essential part to make sure that the application before it gets released is thoroughly tested at speeds and performance that is going to be acceptable to the end user. Okay? And finally, now that you've come to the stage of having developed all of this code, it comes to a point where you've got to be able to that are going to be set up fairly rapidly. That's our release automation and cloud manager solution. Release automation basically takes a very complex set of tasks, although repetitive, but make sure that you have those captured, scripted, and organized and orchestrated through our solution called release automation. Okay? It normally takes a lot of people from various organizations, including operations. This is the ops part of the DevOps, I guess. But you bring all of those rules, and it's all manifest-driven, and you can essentially do a one-touch deploy as frequently as you want it. Now, just deploying it is not enough. You've got to have the infrastructure to be able to deploy it on, or provision. Provisioning is a huge challenge, which is which is where our cloud manager solution comes into play. Provisioning it, but more importantly, to have the governance and policy structures in place to make sure that, let's say a development team comes in, whether it could be a private, it could be public, it could be a hybrid sort of a setup, you've got to be able to govern it in such a way that only those people with the right privileges have access for a limited amount of time. So this, again, is a very critical piece in making sure that you have the velocity that you need to get the product out to the market. A lot of companies are now trying to do this, at least for the test and pre-prod environments, but it's just a matter of time before this moves into a cloud-based production system. Okay, Tesco, one of our most successful release automation customer. They wanted to scale, like I said earlier in the presentation, they wanted to go across an international market, and the challenge was that they wanted to basically, deploy across 5 different environments in 15 countries. So basically, it's 75 different environments, and to set this all up would have taken a huge amount of time. RA is is the solution they use to get to market. So I'm approaching the end of my presentation, but really what I wanted to say was there's a lot of terminology that's flying around continuous integration, continuous validation, delivery, DevOps, and such. This is our way of representing it. When you look at the entire plan to operate lifecycle, you've not really achieved DevOps, true DevOps, until you've cut across the entire spectrum. DevOps cannot just be about code having been written and then getting launched into ops. That's necessary but not sufficient. What you need is code that starts at the very beginning of the development lifecycle, goes through the build, test, release, deployment, and operate stage. Okay, and only then do you have true DevOps. And you've got to have the agile mindset. So if you're looking at it from a maturity model and you want to see where your organization fits within the scheme of things, you can basically say that you've got, oops, I'm sorry. There was supposed to be some text here. But really the first, you move from a reactionary mode to, you first think about whether, and there is no right answer, but really some people start with automating the deployment piece. Some people are on agile, but they say, let me move shift left or move the testing process up in the development life cycle. So that's a shift left paradigm. Then you go into a continuous delivery mode and eventually into a continuously integrated agile environment like I talked about. So you can figure out where you are in this journey. And certainly I think we are there to help you. Forrester has, in a recent study, said that CA is leading the pack amongst all the people who are providing solutions in this space. We feel that we're the right company. The opportunity is there. The technology is evolved. The demand is certainly there. Products, we've got the right suite of products to capture the end-to-end requirements to get you truly agile. And we have the people. We've got the best people in the business who've lived this for a number of years, who've helped customers attain various levels and degrees of success. So with that, I come to the end of my presentation. That's some of our other customers who've been successful. And if you have any other further questions, please meet me after this, or you can stop by any of the booths and learn more about CA's DevOps solutions. Thank you very much.